Hello everyone, myself Karpagam from 2nd BSc ITB. Now I am discussing about my seminar topic for log-based protocols. Log-based protocols. In this type of protocol, any transaction cannot read or write data until it acquires an appropriate lock on it. There are two types of lock, shared lock and exclusive lock. Shared lock. It is also known as read-only lock. In a shared lock, the data item can only read by the transaction. It can be shared between the transaction because when the transaction holds a lock, then it can't update data on the data item. Exclusive lock. In the exclusive lock, the data item can be both reads as well as written by the transaction. This lock is exclusive and in this lock, multiple transactions do not modify data simultaneously. There are four types of lock protocols: simplest lock protocol, pre-climbing lock protocol, two-phase locking 2PL, strict two-phase locking 2PL. Simplest lock protocol. It is the simplest way of locking the data while transaction. Simplest lock-based protocols allow the transaction to get the lock on the data before insert or delete or update on it. It will unlock the data item after completing the transaction. Pre-climbing lock protocol. Pre-climbing lock protocol evaluates the transaction to list all the data items on which they need locks. Before initiating an execution of the transaction, it requests DBMS for all lock on all those data items. If all the locks are granted, then this protocol allows the transaction to begin. When the transaction is completed, then it releases all the lock. If all the locks are not granted, then this protocol allows the transaction to roll back and waits until all the locks are granted. Two-phase locking 2PL. The two-phase locking protocol divides the execution phase of the transaction into three parts. In the first part, when the execution of the transaction starts, it seeks permission for the lock it requires. In the second part, the transaction acquires all the locks. The third phase is started as soon as the transaction releases its first lock. In the third phase, the transaction cannot demand any new locks. It only releases the acquired locks. There are two phases of 2PL. Growing phase. In the growing phase, a new lock on the data item may be acquired by the transaction, but none can be released. Shrinking phase. In the shrinking phase, existing lock held by the transaction may be released, but no new locks can be acquired. Strict two-phase locking, strict 2PL. The first phase of strict 2PL is similar to 2PL. In the first phase, after acquiring all the locks, the transaction continued to execute normally. The only difference between 2PL and strict 2PL is that strict 2PL does not release a lock after using it. Strict 2PL waits until the whole transaction to commit and then it releases all the lock at the time. Strict 2PL protocol does not have shrinking phase of lock. Thank you for all.